Tell me, darling, could we run away? We could hide away by the cactus desert blue. I can see it just a mile away from this crowded place. I could lay there next to you.
Welcome back to another episode of our channel, Best Freaking Friends Forever. So we're going to again continue our West Virginia Natural Disasters Week, because this month is West Virginia's birthday. That's why, I don't think we've said that, but that's why we're really doing all stuff West Virginia this month, because until Father's Day. But we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on West Virginia, just the background, things like that, because it's its birthday this year. So today we're going to talk about the 1985 Election Day floods. So it's also known as the killer floods of 1985 in West Virginia, and it produced the costliest floods in both West Virginia and Virginia in November of 1985. So this hit November 4th, 5th-ish. The event occurred after Hurricane Juan, which was a tropical cyclone in the 1985 Atlantic hurricane season. It meandered near the coast of Louisiana before striking just west of Pensacola, Florida, late on October 31st. So I think what really hurt everybody was that it just meandered, it lingered, and it just stayed. Mm-hmm. Like it was stationary pretty much, and it just kept dropping rain. So damage was heaviest in West Virginia and Virginia. In the former state, the rainfall peaked at 19.7 inches, and just northeast of Montebello. And in West Virginia, 27 river gauging stations were won in a 100-year event. So mostly along the Potomac and Monongahela basins. So, I mean, a lot of us in West Virginia, most of the livable land is along floodplains. The river flooding caused heavy damage in the state, mostly in the eastern portion. High waters washed away topsoil and thousands of trees, and over 13,000 homes and businesses were damaged or destroyed in the state. Damage was estimated at nearly $700 million. Making it West Virginia's costliest flood, and there were 38 deaths. So people, like, I looked at pictures, she looked at pictures, Tiffany looked at pictures, and you can just see, like, the lost, like, looks on people's faces in them. Like, when they're standing on their front stoop because their house had been washed away, but their step remained. And they're just, I just remember this picture of this elderly couple in their 70s. They'd owned a gas station, and they're just sitting. It's just like, what do you do now? It was so devastating. And people were just in a daze after the fact, but
yeah. I'm pretty sure that the 85 flood also kind of set the standards for flood zones. So like when you buy a home, they'll say your house is in a flood zone. They'll say I know one guy out towards my parents, he said like certain parts of his property is flood zone. So then you have to pay flood insurance here.
Yep.
You were saying $70 million in West Virginia in total. So both states, it was $1.4 billion it had caused in total. So just $700 million in West Virginia alone.
That's crazy. Fourth costliest United States hurricanes if it were a tropical cyclone, and there were 62 overall deaths. The flooding spurred changes to the warning practices by the National Weather Service and the government of Virginia. And in December 2011, the United States Army Corps of Engineers completed a flood mitigation project in Roanoke, Virginia, that began following all after the 1985 floods. I guess just between the two states too, a total of 43 bridges were destroyed, another 80 were damaged. So think about that, like our infrastructure near Moorfield, and the bridge carrying US Route 220 was closed, but it was reopened for emergency repairs. And Paw Paw, a flooded river washed away swept up buildings into a bridge, washing it away. Much of Pendleton County became isolated after 18 bridges were washed out and roads were covered by mudslides. That's the thing with flooding too, is all the mud. Mm-hmm. The Cheat River destroyed 110 of the 132 houses in Albright and washed away a trailer park in Rollsburg. Because I think Rollsburg was hit hard too. Not as hard as other places, but it was hit pretty hard too. Down thousands of trees, which were carried into houses and recreation areas to cause additional damage. We're an agricultural state, and we had a lot of agricultural heavy, losses from that.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of chickens or turkeys were killed statewide. At least 8,968 houses were damaged. Another 4,000 were destroyed, which left nearly 2,600 people homeless. So, I mean, Arch Moore, which was our governor at the time, Governor Arch Moore, I mean, we were a disaster area.
Parsons recorded some of the worst damage. I remember that as a child. This is definitely, because this was 2 years before Shelley and I were born. And I remember people talking about it, just like, oh, when the 85 flood happened, you know, it was stories. Just, there was always a story to be told. And yeah, it definitely devastated people.
Well, I think for people back then, it was kind of like our 9/11. It was like, where were you during the 1985 flooding? Like, what did you experience? Because I feel like it's our 9/11. Where were you like during that? I mean, I feel like it sticks with people.
Right.
You do know where, I mean, you remember that time like it was yesterday, no matter how long. I mean, it's been it's been what, 35 years since this. People, it's like it was just yesterday.
Yeah. It's 30, I don't know if you said this part, 35 of the 55 counties were declared disaster areas.
And in the aftermath of the floods, President Reagan declared 121 counties or other areas as disaster areas, including 40 counties and 12 independent cities in Virginia, 29 West Virginia counties, and 6 Pennsylvania counties. And after a year of Hurricane Elena, Gloria, and Juan, as well as flooding in Puerto Rico, the American Red Cross ran out of funds responding to the flooding disaster, prompting an emergency fundraising appeal.
Yeah, once again, the government not being prepared. I mean, don't rely on the government, people. If 2020 did not teach you anything, please let these videos teach you something, because history repeats itself. Government's not prepared for anything. Don't wait on them. Parts of buildings were breaking off and floating away. Sometimes an entire building would lift off its foundation and seen miles away. Locals started to take footage of the rising waters and found themselves rescuing people who were trapped or becoming trapped themselves. Some were stuck inside buildings, and the only thing between them and the water was a glass door. Bonds were formed by survivors and rescuers, making friendships lasting 30 plus years. So like, somebody would rescue somebody, never knew them the day before, would go and rescue them in this flood, and they became friends from it.
And much of the eastern portion of West Virginia was declared a federal disaster area on November 7th. So within 2 weeks of the declaration, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began clearing debris across the state, which was completed by July of '86. Widespread areas were under a boil water advisory due to damage to water facilities, prompting officials to deliver trucks with bottled water through disaster areas.
Yeah, which we talked about that in the Ohio River flood. Floods they're going to hurt your water supply.
Well, and FEMA opened 20 disaster centers across the state to coordinate residents' requests for federal aid and used 290 full or part-time employees. Overall federal assistance totaled $285 million, including $171 million for debris removal and repairing infrastructure, $90 million for loans and temporary housing, and $24 million through payments from the National Flood Insurance Program.
And I've got plenty of pictures I'll put up and share with you guys. Once again, if you just Google it, you'll see so much. But yeah, I mean, water, you go up to the stop sign and the water's like right below the sign. You just kind of see stop floating there.
We don't have the hurricanes, but I feel like we get the remnants from them because we're so much inland. So like anything, especially that hits like the East Coast or comes up from like the Gulf and it makes its way up to us. I mean, usually usually it's died down a lot before it gets to us, but we still get rain from them. Mm-hmm. And that was basically what happened here.
Our coal mines flood too.
Yeah.
From different things like this happening. So, I mean, just water just will go anywhere. Now, Tony did tell me a little bit about the 85 flood. He was born in 83, so a couple years before. And he says he remembers this. I mean, he could have. I mean, when you're a kid and there's a little bit of trauma like that, I'm sure you could remember something from it. But he says, so I'll give you a little idea. His family lives above the water tower in the town. So they're very high up where they live. And so they came down off of the hill, got to the bottom. And at the bottom of the hill, there's an old man that used to live there. And when you drive by, he was had some, I think, issues, but he would always flip everybody off when you would drive by him. And right below his house, you were still coming off the hill when you passed his house, but then like right below him, you still had to come down more. But right past his house, you couldn't get any further. The water was up that high. Mm-hmm. So it had come up so high, it was at like the base of that hill that they live on. and there's another little road that veered back up the hill, and they had to go back up that way, so they couldn't even get into town. Once again, why it's so important to have, even if you just have a week's worth of food in your home to sustain you and your family, water especially.
Yeah, flashlights, batteries, a radio of some kind. Yeah, because you just don't know how long something is going to last. And even nowadays we have stuff that lasts for days. I mean, think about what they didn't have back then that we have now. Even
that was the 1985 election day flood in West Virginia. It's a pretty intense event that happened here in West Virginia. I mean, people still talk about it today, and it would happen in 85. Not too long ago. Seems like yesterday, as they say. But let us know, is there anything you'd like us to cover? Did we miss something? Please inform us if we missed something. But until next time, I am Tiffany. This is my BFF Shelley. Join us next time, friends, for another great episode.